Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Sawadee Kap. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This evening, we have our Sunday night meditation here in the main hall. And tonight, I'm going to be guiding you in a loving kindness meditation session. And then afterwards, I'll share just a little bit of the teachings of the Buddha with you. And then essentially open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the path to enlightenment in the teachings of the Buddha. This individual that we refer to as the Buddha, over 2,500 years ago, he figured out how to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all the causes and conditions that are producing things like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are eliminated from the mind. And this is accomplished through training of the mind. That's why we use meditation to help train the mind. It's helping to uproot the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings. Oftentimes people think that these discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others is coming from something external. You might think it's your mom and dad that are making you angry, or your brothers and sisters are frustrating you, or your boss is annoying you. This isn't actually true. It's your own mind that's causing these feelings. This is the reason why you can actually eliminate them. If it was other people who was causing these feelings, you would actually never be able to eliminate these feelings from the mind. So the Buddha taught an entire path of how to train your mind to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. And he figured this out on his own. And then he dedicated the rest of his life to sharing those independently discovered teachings with countless people. And then countless people got to enlightenment during his lifetime. And then he preserved the teachings in such a way that countless more people got to enlightenment after his death. Not only will an individual eliminate those discontent feelings, but you'll notice that your mind's focused, concentrated, you have clarity and deep memory. This is coming through training of the mind where you're uprooting certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. He discovered these individual pollutions and the tools and techniques of how to eliminate them. And when you uproot them, not only will you eliminate discontent feelings, but the mind will have this focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile any longer. Your relationships will be at ease because in the unenlightened state, you have a certain amount of bitterness and harshness and hostility in your mind, and you'll firmly believe that it's other people that are causing that. You might even feel justified in the way that you treat other people, but you can actually get to a point where you're not doing that anymore, where you're being loving and kind to all the people around you. And loving kindness meditation is an important component of that. So this loving kindness meditation is essentially going to rewire your mind to be more loving and kind. What loving kindness is where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, where you have active goodwill towards others without judging them. This is unconditional love, where someone doesn't have to meet any certain conditions in order for you to love them. That's actually true love. Oftentimes people misunderstand love. They might think that they're falling in love and they're falling out of love. If that's the way you think about love, that's actually not love. You can't actually fall in love and out of love if you actually are practicing true love or unconditional love. What that actually is it's the mind's cravings and longing, yearning, wants, and expectations. And if somebody meets your expectations, you might say, I love you. But then when they stop meeting your expectations, you might say, I don't love you anymore. That's just because they're not doing things your way. In fact, sometimes you might have certain people that you like and certain people that you dislike. The people that you like, it's because they're meeting your expectations. They're doing things the way you want them to do it. And then when they're not meeting your expectations, you might have dislike towards them. And you might think it's coming from those other people, but it's actually coming from your own mind. You can eliminate this to get to the point where you have love and kindness for everyone. So this meditation is going to help to rewire your mind, where you can fill up your mind with this loving kindness. But then the real transformation is occurring when you go out into the world, learning how to be loving and kind with people on a day-to-day basis. You wouldn't actually be able to meditate your way to the elimination of anger. It's not going to be possible. There's that component to it, but you actually need to go out into the world and being loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Sometimes when we have difficulties in relationships, we think the way to solve that is to change the other person. Oftentimes that's what we do, go around trying to change other people. But you can't change other people. Each individual person needs to decide for themselves that they're interested in change. All you can really do is change your own mind and the way that you interact with people. As long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, that's all going to come back to you. This is the natural law of karma, of cause and effect. You might have actually heard this referred to as karma. This is the Sanskrit version of this word, just a different language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, which people who study those will tend to use the word karma. This is a natural law of cause and effect, or action and result. This isn't something that you believe. It's not anything mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards or who's to blame or who's at fault. There's no being who's overseeing this and deciding who gets what. It's a sequence of events. And if this word karma translated to just one English word, I would use it because it'd be easier for everyone, but it doesn't. It's cause and effect, or action and result. And when you make wise decisions, you will experience wholesome karma, or wholesome results. And when you make unwise decisions, you will experience unwholesome karma, or unwholesome results. And when you lack wisdom of this natural law, you will tend to make unwise decisions and you will experience unwholesome results. And when the mind's experiencing that, we tend to blame it on other people in the unenlightened state. Or we might say it's good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate or some being like God or some entity called the universe. Or again, sometimes people blame it on other people. But what you can see if you look at this closely without believing in it, but investigating and examining it for yourself, reflecting on it to independently verify it, and then practice to be able to see the truth, you can see that everything you're experiencing in life is a result of your decisions. And if you need help to be able to see that, ask yourself these questions. Who chose to sit where you're sitting right now? Who chose the clothing that you're wearing? Who chose the hairstyle that you have? Who chose whether or not you ate breakfast? Who chose where you live? Who chose the job or occupation that you have? Who chose the friends that you spend time with? These are all choices that you're making. And if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you'll experience different results. But if what you're experiencing is good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or if it's God or some entity called the universe, or if it's other people that are causing you to experience certain things in life, you're locked in. You can't change anything because you can't change any of those things. And that's not actually true reality of what's actually occurring. So this meditation, loving kindness meditation, is actually going to be a decision that you're making to reduce and eliminate the anger, the hatred, the ill will, the bitterness, the harshness, the hostility, and even the lesser versions like frustration, agitation, and annoyance. Getting to the point where you don't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. And of course, this is coming through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you experience this. You can't just snap your fingers and instantly eliminate the anger, hatred, and ill will. And not only will this eliminate your anger, hatred, or will towards others, but towards yourself as well. Because oftentimes people have a negative inner dialogue within their own mind. They have like a negative self-talk where you're diminishing and degrading yourself. That's no fun to walk around with that. So you can actually eliminate that too through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is people sometimes think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't true. This isn't what he taught. He taught about gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So tonight, that's what we're going to do, a bit of gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. The way that we do this meditation is we start with some chanting to ease into the meditation. And I see some of you guys have these chanting sheets. You're welcome to get one over there, over by the cushions. You guys can get a chanting sheet if you like. And for those of you guys online, you can actually get these on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books and scroll down towards the bottom, and you'll be able to see the chanting sheet there. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, the students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. This is how they committed them to memory. So chanting started as a learning tool, as a learning device. And that's essentially what we're using it for, is to ease our mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, it was more as a learning tool, as a learning device, where today we have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this to be able to study the teachings. They didn't have that 2,500 years ago. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or any of that kind of stuff. There's none of that kind of stuff in the teachings of the Buddha. If you're seeing those kinds of things associated with his teachings, those aren't actually the teachings of the Buddha. Those are gross misunderstandings of his teachings. He never taught any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. He didn't teach you to believe a bunch of things and then hope something good happens when you die. He's teaching you to learn, grow, and develop in this life to get to that ideal life where your mind can be completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy in this life. So if you like to chant along, you're going to see a lot more benefit in your meditation. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself, because the Buddha wouldn't have walked around and said, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me, right? This would be ego if somebody did this. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not walking around with ego thinking that you're above other people. And you're also not putting yourself below other people, because sometimes that's what the unenlightened mind does, is you'll put yourself below people and your mind will be shaken up by that. So the Buddha wouldn't have created these chants himself. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's where I suspect these chants actually came from, is his students, either during his life or after his death. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you some guidance on something called breathing mindfulness meditation. This meditation, you're going to be focused on the breath, and anytime the mind moves off the breath, you're going to cut that off and bring the mind back to the breath. This is kind of preparing your mind for the loving kindness meditation. So I'm going to be essentially teaching you and guiding you and instructing you how to do that while we're actually doing it. Then there's just going to be a brief period, maybe 3 minutes or so, where we're actually doing that meditation, where there's going to be quietness. Now, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds while we're meditating. Out here in the main hall, you're going to hear the market, the sounds of the market, and stuff like that. This is all just impermanence. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be frustrated or annoyed. This is what the unenlightened mind does, is it craves permanence while you live in an impermanent world where things are constantly changing. So you can be in meditation understanding that the world around you is impermanent. And when you hear a sound, you just understand that's normal. That sound's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. And you can understand to just stay focused on the breath. Your mind will move off the breath, but you just cut it off and let it go and come back to the breath. Then I'm going to come back in with some affirmations and some phrases. You're going to hear me say things like, may I be peaceful. And I'm going to be doing that on the out breath. And whenever you get to your next out breath, you can repeat that within your own mind on the out breath. And then you're going to hear me say, may I be safe. And then again, you can repeat that in your mind on the out breath whenever you get to it. Then you'll hear me say, may I be well. Again, on the out breath whenever you get to it. Then, may I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. And then you're going to hear me go to these successively wider and wider rings until eventually we get to all beings. And you're going to hear me say things like, may mom and dad be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness. This meditation isn't to change mom and dad. This meditation isn't to invoke some kind of special power to come and change mom and dad. This is actually to change your mind so you can have more loving and kind thoughts in your mind about mom and dad and the different rings that we go through, so that now when you're around mom and dad or any of these other beings that we mention in our meditation, that you can be more loving and kind. That's the cause and effect, this natural law of karma, that when you're more loving and kind to the people around you for a consistent long-term period of time, that's where you'll see loving kindness coming back to you. Now, you need to be able to do this without any expectation of anything in return. When you go from the meditation to practicing in your day-to-day life, where you're making decisions to be loving and kind, you're going to need to do that without the expectation that other people are loving and kind to you, and just understand that it's a wise decision to be loving and kind with people. If you're angry and bitter and harsh and hostile to people, that's all that's going to come back to you. So this meditation is essentially like filling up your gas tank so that then you can go out into the world and be loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions. But you're going to need more than just this meditation. There's a core central teaching of the Buddha called the Eightfold Path that's going to guide you in this ability to be loving and kind and practice harmlessness when you go out into the world. So after that loving kindness meditation, we're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation. Then we're going to come out of this with some more chanting. The way that I think about this is like a loving kindness sandwich. You've got loving kindness in the middle, and the lettuce and tomato is the breathing mindfulness meditation. And then the bread holding it all together, this is the chanting, right? So this is the kind of the process. I'm going to walk you through this whole meditation. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. Because your body can't be in the same position permanently because we live in an impermanent world. This loving kindness meditation, we usually do it in the seated, lying, and standing positions. We don't do it in the walking position. But I'll give you guys some guidance on the seated position because that's where most of the people are learning. But there's these other positions that you can learn at any time. It's part of our courses and classes and retreats and all these different things. So most people will either be sitting on the floor, in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair. You can really sit however you like. What I'm going to share with you are just recommendations or suggestions. The important thing is that you're comfortable, that your body's not painful, but it's not luxurious, that it's in the middle and it's comfortable. So if it's something that I'm sharing with you, wonderful, use it. If not, then find out something on your own, right? Discover something on your own. It doesn't matter. As long as your body's comfortable, there's not just one way to actually sit. So these are just some suggestions for you to consider. You could be sitting on the floor with some cushions under your rear. This kind of helps to soften your seat. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, you like to just do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. You might even just rest your hands comfortably in your lap. And then for anybody who's maybe in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair, you can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. And when I teach you in the classroom over there, I sit in a chair with my legs crossed. So that's an option for you if you're sitting in a chair as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. You like the upper body to be erect, with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert while you're meditating. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will not only keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease into the meditation, which you guys are welcome to join in on. And then I'll come back in with the guidance to be able to guide you all the way through the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang samuno Sakatoro kawitu Anutero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa manusrang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these phrases in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have harmed me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Potang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato วะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, once again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see everyone here this evening. Welcome to everyone online who's joining as well. This was loving kindness meditation. This is a form of meditation that will gradually, slowly but surely, transform your mind away from anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike towards others. This is a meditation that's rewiring your mind to be more loving and kind. And then as you do this meditation, you go out into the world and be loving and kind with the people around you. That's where the real transformation is occurring. So this is a great meditation to do in the morning, because you go out in your day starting with all this loving kindness in your mind, because that's where you're going to have all your conversations and all your discussions. You're going to see your boss, your coworkers, your family, your friends, and you like to have all that loving kindness in your mind as you're going out into your day. That doesn't mean to say you couldn't do this meditation at other times, because you surely could. 2 p.m., 4 p.m., whenever you'd like. Even if you get a phone call and you're noticing a bunch of anger coming up in your mind, maybe you get off the phone and do this meditation. This is what's going to knock down your anger, hatred, and ill will and all those lesser versions. Even that negative self-talk, that inner dialogue where you might be degrading and diminishing yourself, because it's no fun to walk around with that stuff. Oftentimes people think when anger is coming at you that you should be angry back, and somehow that's going to solve it. Anger will never extinguish anger. In order to extinguish anger, you need to have loving kindness. So when anger is coming at you, you're going to need to be loving and kind. And sometimes one of the most loving and kind things you can do is actually walk away. That can be the most loving and kind thing you do. But your ego might not allow you to do that. Your ego might be like, who are you to talk to me like that? Right? You might not be willing to walk away. You need to knock that ego down too, because you don't need that. You can walk away and understand that that's the most loving and kind thing you could do. Because sitting there yelling and hollering and being argumentative in your conversations, it isn't going to solve anything. The Buddha teaches all kinds of different teachings. This is referred to as the natural laws of existence. He's showing you this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decisions. And the more you study it, you can see the truth for yourself. He didn't teach rules and commandments. He didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. He didn't teach you to believe a bunch of things and hope something good happens when you die. He shares wisdom with you that you can independently verify. So what you do is you learn, investigate, and examine his teachings. You reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them, implementing them into your day-to-day life, and that's where you see the real transformation occurring. As you cultivate wisdom, you can go out into the world and make better and better decisions through that wisdom. But when you lack wisdom, you'll tend to make unwise decisions, and it'll produce unwholesome results. That's what we did when we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. We made unwise decisions. That's why we fell down. We hit our head. We bumped our elbows. We broke our toys. And we cried and cried and cried because we didn't understand the world that we lived in. We really struggled. We had difficulties in this world because we didn't understand it. And this natural law was affecting us, whether we were aware of it or not. And the same thing is true with this natural law of karma. It's affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. And just like the natural law of gravity, when you lack wisdom of it, you'll tend to make unwise decisions and it'll produce unwholesome results. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of that natural law of gravity. And now you might say that we're fully awake to to the natural law of gravity, which means we fully cultivated wisdom. That's what being awake means, or awakening. It means that you've cultivated wisdom about the natural laws. You've cultivated this wisdom. So we might say we're fully awake to this natural law of gravity. And that's why we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world, because we make wise decisions about this natural law. And that's why we don't struggle and have difficulties with it. Now, if we fall down, we might even start laughing, right? We might think it's funny, right? But at one time, it wasn't that way. So we started learning how to tie our shoes tighter. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a kid all the time. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk. We started making wiser decisions because we had wisdom about this world. And now we are fully awake to that natural law of gravity. So this natural law of Karma is the same thing. It's affecting you whether you're aware of it or not, and you'll struggle and have difficulties when you don't understand this natural law. That's what the stress and the anxiety, the guilt, the shame, the fear, this sadness and anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, it's there to help you see that your mind isn't fully awake yet, that you're still struggling because there's certain wisdom that you don't have about the world. And as you cultivate wisdom about this world, one of the things you can cultivate the wisdom about is how to clean up your mind. Because there's this physical body and then there's this mind. And many of us learned how to clean this physical body as we were growing up as children. Our parents tended to teach us that. And initially, we weren't really interested in learning how to do that. We were more interested in playing and being with our friends and all that kind of stuff. But slowly but surely, we started enjoying taking showers, right? By the time we were 10, 12, 14 years old, we might even started spending a lot of time in there with that hot water rolling down over our back, or cold, whatever it is that you like. And we started to clean the body because we saw the benefit in this. Well, there's this other part to this being who you are, which is the mind. The mind is not the brain. The brain is the physical organ. There's this non-physical, non-tangible mind that if you haven't been cleaning that and you haven't learned how to clean that, you haven't learned the wisdom of that, of course you're going to feel uncomfortable walking around the world, right? Because if you didn't clean this body for several days, weeks, or months, or even years, you'd feel very uncomfortable walking around with a dirty body. So it's the same thing, is that if you haven't learned how to clean the mind, you're going to walk around the world and feel uncomfortable with that. So now you're in a place that understands how to clean the mind, because many of us grew up in places that didn't understand that, and we didn't learn how to do that growing up. So you can slowly but surely learn how to clean up this mind. And even when you're here, you can do that, but even as you travel, because nowadays with modern technology, we have live streaming, we have videos, we have books, we have audiobooks, all kinds of different ways that you can learn and grow and develop on the path. And it's available for you at no cost. Everything that we share is to help you be able to understand this path, cultivate this wisdom, how to clean the mind, and get to the point where the mind's experiencing complete peace and complete joy. So if that's something you're interested in, you have the ability to do that. You can see more information on our website. You can come to our classes, our courses, our retreats while you're here. In fact, tonight at 9 p.m., I'm going to be sharing a class where I'm going to first do breathing mindfulness meditation with students, and then I'm going to teach you the artwork, the symbolism, the architecture of temples and temple construction. So maybe you're going around and you're visiting temples, and maybe they're really beautiful and they're interesting, but you don't quite understand what it is that you're looking at. If you'd like to come to class tonight, I'm going to teach you this artwork and symbolism, the architecture that you're seeing in temples, and then it'll have more meaning for you. It's almost like the temple walls speak to you, because now you understand the language of these artists. These artists created these temples 500 to 1,000 years ago. And if you understand the language that they were speaking, you'll actually be able to walk around these temples and glean a lot of information from the artwork, the architecture, and the symbolism. So you're more than welcome to come to that class tonight at 9 p.m. where we're going to be doing meditation, and then I'll be sharing teachings with you guys on that. So the teachings of the Buddha are teaching you what's causing the mind to be discontent. What's causing the mind to be discontent and experience these feelings like anger, sadness, and frustration in others is it's holding on. It's craving permanence while you live in an impermanent world. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy and excited and elated. It gets pleasant feelings. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. The mind craves permanence. I'll just give you some examples of this. Like, say you bought a brand new car, right? If you bought a brand new car and you drove it to a store and you parked it and you went inside and you came out and you saw a scratch on your car, if you get frustrated or angry in that situation, it's not the scratch that's causing it. And it's not the person who scratched your car. It's the mind craving permanence, wanting this car to look permanently beautiful. when it's not possible for the car to look permanently beautiful, because the car is impermanent. It's constantly changing. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. So if you crave permanence, you'll be angry and frustrated when you experience that. That's the mind causing it itself. It's not the outside world. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because obviously when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. But the fact is that this car is going to deteriorate. It's only a matter of time because it's impermanent. Here's another example. Let's just say you were really excited to go to Thailand and you just couldn't wait to get to Thailand because you heard they have mango and sticky rice and great massages and waterfalls and maybe elephants that you're going to go see. You're so excited to go to Thailand. Well, if you showed up to your airplane at the airport and your flight was delayed, you would have potentially been angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. It's not the airline company that's causing that. It's the mind craving permanence. I want every single flight to take off on time, right? Especially the flights you're on. You probably want that, right? So every single flight has to take off on time. Well, this isn't possible because you live in an impermanent world. There's going to be maintenance issues. There's going to be crew issues. There's going to be weather issues. These are all going to occur. And this is just impermanence. That's what's going to happen, is if you travel enough, you're going to experience a delay or maybe even a cancellation of a flight. But if you crave permanence, then your mind's going to be discontent when you're experiencing impermanence. So one of the ways to say this is, yes, the mind craves permanence, but another way to say it is that the mind does not like impermanence. It doesn't like change. You can look at situations where you've been angry or sad or frustrated and see this for yourself. If you get really happy when it's sunny outside, when it rains, you'll be sad and frustrated. The only thing that happened here is change. That's it. It's just change. And if you base your inner feelings of happiness on the sun, well, you can only be happy when it's sunny. So that means you're limiting your ability to be happy. Or if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. Again, the only thing that's happened here is change. This is how you can see that it's not other people that are causing you to be angry, because there's nobody else involved. It just went from sun to rain. It just went from here to here. That's it. But the mind craves permanence. So remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. You need to be able to see this for yourself. So look at your own life. Look at a situation where you've recently been angry or sad or frustrated or irritated or some other feeling. Might have been this morning or yesterday or last week. What was it that your mind was longing, yearning for? What were you craving? And if you would have gotten it, you would have had pleasant feelings like happiness or excitement or elation. But because you didn't get what you wanted, there was some kind of painful feeling that came into the mind, some anger, sadness, frustration, or others. Now, at that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else, because that's what the unenlightened mind does, is it'll try to blame somebody else for the feelings that you're experiencing. But look at it with these fresh eyes. What was it that you were longing and yearning for? And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. If you can see this for yourself, you can have a real breakthrough, that you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, and then you can actually start working on solving it. Whereas if we go around the world believing that it's other people that are causing these feelings, you'll never actually be able to solve it, because you won't be able to apply any solution to fixing that. Because when the mind experiences painful feelings, it will tend to think it's from something external, and then it'll become unskillful. It'll tend to push people away, or it'll push the situation away. This is called aversion, where you might have pushed away friends or family members out of your life, thinking that that was going to solve the problem, but you can see that that didn't actually solve the problem. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. Or you might try to put your expectations on people, try to pressure them or force them to do things your way. In fact, people might be doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away or being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or putting expectations on you. So if you can see that this is what your mind's doing, that it's causing these feelings itself, you can have this breakthrough, and now you can start looking inward and start working and applying a real solution. And that's what the Buddha shared, is this solution to be able to help you. And that's the beauty in his teachings, is that slowly but surely, as you're applying them in your day-to-day life, you can see the improvement. Because you'll be in situations where you know you normally get angry and sad and frustrated, and you'll be in those same situations and you'll see that your mind isn't experiencing that anymore. So slowly but surely, you can wear away this anger and bitterness and harshness and hostility. The Buddha gives a great analogy on this. I'll share this with you, and then I'll open up to whatever questions you guys have. He talks about this digging tool with a wooden handle. And if you were digging with this tool every single day, you're wearing away wood from the handle every single day. And you're not going to know how much wood you're wearing away from the handle. But when you dig with this tool every single day, eventually you're going to get to the point where the handle is exhausted and it needs to be replaced. So you're not going to know each day how much wood is being worn away from the handle. But when the handle's completely exhausted and it needs to be replaced, you'll know that. And the same thing is true with your anger, your frustration, your agitation, your annoyance, all these other discontent feelings. If you're dedicating yourself to training your mind in the way that the Buddha taught, you're not going to know each day exactly how much anger and hatred you're wearing away. But when it's completely gone, you're going to know that. Because it'll be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You haven't been angry. You haven't been frustrated. You haven't been agitated or annoyed. You'll know that your mind is improved. And this happens in individual relationships. It's not going to be like one day you're bitter and harsh and hostile and argumentative and you just snap your fingers and instantly you're loving and kind. It's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. That's why, like maybe with your friends, you're pretty polite and respectful and kind, and those relationships go really well. But your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, if you have children, those are the really challenging relationships because your mind is holding on with expectations and craving. You're longing and yearning and wanting things to be a certain way. This is why you might think that they're the problem, because over here in these relationships, maybe you're having a fine time and you're getting along just fine because you're not craving or wanting or expecting those people to be a certain way. But these people over here, your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, you have this longing, yearning, and this craving. So I'm just going to stop here and see if you guys have any questions that you might want to ask. If you're here at the temple and you'd like to ask questions, we have microphones. One's in the front here, one's in the back. If you would like to ask a question, just get one of the microphones, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on, and you just hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you and share them around. And anybody who would like to ask a question, you're more than welcome to ask a question. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that would be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And whoever's online through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, if you would like to ask questions, you can put that in the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that way. So is there anybody here online that would like to ask questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So would you say that all the pollution that we experience in the mind essentially comes back to the craving of impermanence?
All the pollution that we have in the unenlightened mind comes back to something that oftentimes people refer to as ignorance. I tend to not use this word because it's a derogatory word, and the way that a Buddhist speaks, the way an enlightened being speaks, they don't speak in a derogatory, degrading way. So a better way to think about this is the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding that the mind has. The mind truly doesn't understand the way the world is, that it just believes. And with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself to believe it. So this craving and anger, this all comes back to the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. So the anger does come back to the craving. If it wasn't for craving, you wouldn't be angry, but you wouldn't have craving if there wasn't ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. So we call it craving, anger, and ignorance. I think you were here Wednesday when I was teaching that. We call it craving, anger, and ignorance, but it's really because of ignorance that craving and anger continues. Because if you understood how detrimental craving, desire, attachment is, you would train your mind to eliminate it because it's causing all these complications with significant discontent feelings, and you just keep stuck in the same cycle over and over and over again of experiencing these things. So that's why on the path, because the problem comes back to ignorance, on this path, the ultimate goal is to cultivate wisdom. That's why there's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false, and you've got to get to wisdom. So that's why on this path, you're not a believer, you're not a devotee, you're not a follower, you're an independent practitioner looking to cultivate wisdom. And a teacher is essentially like a tour guide, pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand, but it's you doing the work to be able to think about what's being shared, reflect on that, and practice it to be able to see the truth. So it all comes back to this ignorance, and that's why you'd like to cultivate wisdom. No, don't believe anything. Don't believe others. Don't believe me. Don't believe the books I write. Don't believe anything. You need to be able to see the truth, and that's what's going to get you to wisdom. The way that I think about it is, did you grow up with Santa Claus? How many of you guys grew up with the idea of Santa Claus? A lot of you? Okay. Some of you that maybe didn't grow up that way, you kind of understand the concept of Santa Claus, right? Well, I don't know about you, but I believed in Santa Claus when I was growing up. And at the age of 8, I found out that Santa Claus didn't exist. Boy, was I crushed. My sister came to me Christmas morning and she was like, David, I saw Mom and Dad eating the cookies and milk last night. There's no such thing as Santa Claus. Oh man, I felt betrayed, right? My parents had been lying to me all this time, right? I was shaken up because my beliefs were shaken up, right? Because I was just believing. Well, eventually you cultivate wisdom and you know that there's no such thing as Santa Claus. And no matter how many big fat men with a big beard and red suits you see, you know that's not Santa Claus. And no matter how many Christmas carols you hear, you know that's not Santa Claus. Nobody can shake you off of that because you know the truth, that there's no such thing as Santa Claus. Well, there's these natural laws that you need to be able to get to that same point with, that you know the truth, that you're not believing them. And that's where your mind becomes steady, stable, and unshakable. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is unshakable. It doesn't waver and flip back and forth because your mind now understands the truth and you can see the true reality of the world. And that's why you would like to be cultivating more and more wisdom, because that's going to teach you how to eliminate your cravings, and then that's going to help you eliminate your anger. You're welcome. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you for the session. I really resonated with the idea of craving for impermanence, craving for permanence, which is something I personally, I think, tend to feel quite a lot. Might you have any suggestions about how we can work with our loved ones who are also craving for permanence, while we are, attending sessions like these and helping ourselves on the path, on a certain path, but our very near and dear ones also are craving permanence, and they might have certain behaviors that may be leading to us feeling certain way. So how can we work with them or help ourselves in those situations?
Sure. So the first thing to keep in mind is that this path to enlightenment is always about your inner growth and your inner development. If you don't prioritize that, you can't be helpful to anybody. So you need to first cultivate wisdom yourself in order to be able to develop your own mind and develop that wisdom. And as you do that, one of the things that the mind can do is it can have a craving, desire, attachment to changing other people. And you need to be sure that your mind's not doing that. So that's why you'd like to first focus on your own growth and your own development. And as you get to that point where you're learning more, you're cultivating your mind more, you're seeing that the teachings are actually working, you're starting to know the truth more and more. If you'd like to be able to help people around you, the Buddha talks about this is possible. There's people that you know that will heed your advice. But you need to be really skillful when you do this, because if you just step into their life and give them unsolicited guidance, this is just your own craving and your own ego, your own conceit, trying to step in and tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing in their life. So you need to be very skillful, like maybe send them a link to a YouTube video that teaches like what I'm teaching. You just send them a link and you say, hey, I would like to have a conversation with you about this. I was curious if you'd be willing to watch this video so that we can have a conversation about it. I'm curious what your thoughts are. So now they're watching the video with a purpose, right? Or maybe you get them a book as a gift, right? Like the books that have the original words of the Buddha, the books that I share, they're available for free. You can actually download them for free. You can take them and go print them yourself. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get them on Amazon and you can give someone a book for free because they need to make the choice to learn and grow and develop. You can't force someone to get to enlightenment, not that you're intending to do so, but it's not possible. So they actually need to step forward. And if they're not willing to step forward and make the very first step to just watch a video or read a book, they're not going to make the 1,000,001 decisions that it takes for them to be able to improve and cultivate wisdom on the path. So you'd like to provide them the opportunity to learn and understand while stepping back and letting them choose to do that on their own so that they're free of any craving or expectation from you. Because if you were trying to put expectations on them or coerce them or force them to try to learn the path, it's not going to work out well. They're not going to be very committed to it anyway. They're just going to do it because maybe you told them to do it, where you would like to just provide them an opportunity and see if they would like to step forward to that opportunity. So the way that I've done this in some situations is like my sister. Sometimes I see her struggling with things and I'll say, wow, sis, the Buddha offers a really good teaching that would like really help you in this situation. And then I just stop and see what she says. And normally she doesn't say anything. She's just off to the next thing, right? And then I wait like 2 or 3 months or something like this. And then she's talking about something else. And I'm like, the Buddha has a teaching that would really help you in this situation. If you're interested in knowing that, I could share it with you. And then she doesn't say anything. So we're off to the next thing, right? So I've done that 2 or 3 times and she never takes me up on the offer. But about 2 or 3 years after I started doing those kinds of things and I stopped doing it, one day she contacted me. She's like, hey, David, people in the office were talking about Buddhism today and they were asking me questions and I was able to answer all their questions. I was like, oh yeah, really? How did you do that? She was like, well, I've been reading your Facebook posts. I'm in your Facebook group and I saw your Facebook posts. And I was like, oh, sweet. I didn't even know you were reading those. So each person has to approach this path on their own terms. So while I was interested in helping my sister and giving her the coaching that she needed, that wasn't her approach. Her approach was she was interested in reading it on Facebook. And I didn't even know she was doing that. So you try 1, 2, maybe 3 times at most, spread over about a year or so. And then you just step back and just let the person decide on their own. Because if they're interested in getting help, they'll get that help. But if they don't get the help, then they're going to stay in that discontentedness. But when they see you becoming more and more peaceful, more and more joyful, because if you prioritize your development of your mind, you're becoming more and more peaceful, they're going to start seeing what you're doing. And they're going to be like, whoa, like, you used to get so angry in this situation. What are you doing? What have you been doing? It's kind of like if you saw someone eating a piece of chocolate cake with a big smile on their face, you're going to be like, where'd you get that chocolate cake? That looks pretty good. I'd like to have a bite of that, right? It's the same kind of thing. So the best thing you can do is prioritize your own growth, your own development. And as you're becoming more and more peaceful, the people around you are going to notice that, and they're going to start asking you questions. And that's the position you would really like to be in, where they're asking you. But you can, proactively try to help people with some of these examples that I gave and the ways that I mentioned. But you just need to be careful that you're not craving yourself for them to do these things, and your ego is not in there trying to kind of force them to do these kinds of things and try to talk down to them. You just need to maintain your practice and your own growth and your own development. Yeah, you're welcome. Hey, you guys go. I'm not sure who's first, who's second. Feel free to go for it. Mm-hmm. These are Buddhist microphones. You need to be patient with them. When you turn them on, it takes like 2 seconds for them to engage.
Thing is working right now?
Yeah, it's working. Yeah.
Thank you for the session. How do you follow purpose while being detached from outcomes?
Sure. So first, it's important to understand that each individual being doesn't have, some of y'all's mics are on. I think that's why we're getting the feedback. There you go. Okay. So it's important to understand that each individual being doesn't have a dedicated purpose in this world. Sometimes that's the way we like to do it. Our ego wants to tell us that we have some kind of, maybe God-given purpose in the world, or some entity or universe has given us a purpose in the world. That's our ego trying to make us think that we're more significant than we really are. What we really are is we're one being of many beings, and now we get to decide what it is that we would like to do in this world. And now we decide what it is that we would like to do. There's nobody who's giving us that purpose, or we're not born into the world with a purpose. But oftentimes the mind wants to try to take that on, and that's the ego. Or we might say, I need to find my purpose in the world. Sometimes the mind does that. So whatever you choose to do, you'll actually figure that out better when you knock down these pollutions that the Buddha discovered. These pollutions that are in the mind, it'll take you in all kinds of different directions. I'll just give you a little story of this, then I'll circle back and help you understand. That when I went to college at first, I took a career class to be able to help me figure out what I'd like to do in the world. And in this career class, I decided at the end that I would like to either be a police officer or a social worker, because I was really interested in helping people. And I thought that that's what I would like to do in the world. Well, then I started taking some other classes like sociology, psychology, computers, and all these things. And I found out at this time, this was the early 1990s, I found out that people who do computers make a lot of money. And I was like, that's what I want, because I grew up poor. And I was like, I want that money. So I went in this whole direction towards money, making money with IT and computers and all that kind of stuff. And I learned a ton in that direction, right? But ultimately, after I extinguished that craving, one of the ways you extinguish a craving is by obtaining it, right? After I extinguished that craving of having a big salary and making all kinds of money, ultimately I came back to what it was, which was my true interest in life, which was to help people. And that's what I'm doing now. Right? And this is what I'll be doing for the rest of my life, because I'm no longer craving money, but I needed to extinguish that. So when you have these pollutions in your mind, where your mind's longing, yearning, it'll take you on these detours that aren't necessarily what it is that you truly are being interested to do in this world. You might just be chasing your cravings. But when you train your mind and you prioritize the training of your mind and you knock those things down, you can see what is it that you truly are interested in doing in this world. One of the examples that I give is, you guys might have gotten mango and sticky rice by some lady on the corner that is serving mango and sticky rice. And she can't imagine doing anything else but selling you mango and sticky rice. She woke up this morning, she went out in her mango grove, she happily picked each little mango, brushed them off, cleaned them up, brought them to the market. She's sitting there slicing up the mangoes with a big old smile on her face, putting them over top of the sticky rice, pouring that coconut milk on there, and handing it to you with a big smile and collecting her 40 baht. And she can't imagine doing anything else but selling you that mango and sticky rice. So each person needs to find, what is your mango and sticky rice? What is it that you're truly interested in doing in this world? And how are you going to contribute to this world? And what is it that you can do where money doesn't even matter? Of course, you need to make money in order to sustain your life, but you'd like to get to a point where you have a livelihood, that you're sustaining your life without causing harm to others. And the Buddha teaches you how to do that. And you enjoy this livelihood so much that you would do it even if you didn't get paid for it. You just enjoy it that much. It doesn't even feel like work, right? When you go to do this particular thing. That's what you'd ultimately like to get to. And the way that you do that is by prioritizing the training of your mind to get rid of the pollution out of your mind. But then as you're doing this, instead of chasing after things, or instead of being all the way on the other side where you're dull and lethargic and lazy and could care less what's going on in your life, you got to come to the middle where your mind's gradually working towards goals, objectives, or interest, but you're not basing your feelings on whether you accomplish those things or not. You can have enthusiasm and ambition, but you're not basing your feelings on it. Because over here, when you're chasing, you might actually call this a goal, but it's actually not a goal. Because if you get it, you're happy, and if you don't get it, you're sad or frustrated. That's actually a craving, desire, attachment masquerading as a goal. A true goal is something that you can gradually work towards with wise decision-making, where you're not longing, yearning, you're just applying wise decisions to be able to accomplish this thing. And now let's just say you're 80% of the way there. You can look at it and say, I haven't met my goal yet. What should I do here? Well, I can give myself more time. That would allow me to meet the goal. Or I can put more resources towards it to allow me to accomplish this goal. Or you know what? 80% is fine. I'm completely fine with the 80%. I don't need to go any further. And now you can maintain your peace and you can maintain your joy. So you can learn and train your mind how to do this, but it doesn't know how to do it out of the box because it has that craving, that unknowing of true reality, that lack of wisdom, and it'll just chase and chase and chase and chase. So one of the things I used to do, I used to set goals for myself that I knew there was absolutely no way that I could ever make it. And I would train my mind to be peaceful and joyful, just gradually working towards it and maintaining my peacefulness and joy, even though I didn't get to it. So the way you do it is you can train your mind by setting goals. You know how they say, like, shoot for the moon, and if you miss, at least you'll be among the stars. This is a perfect way to actually live your life, is whatever your goals are, whatever you're trying to accomplish, shoot for the moon. Don't crave and long and yearn and chase it, but shoot for the moon, make wise decisions like you're going to the moon. And then if you fall short of it for any reason, whatever your goal was, just look at it and be like, what do I need to do here? Should I extend my timeline? Should I add resources? Or, hey, 80% or 60% or 20% is just fine. I don't need to go any further. Then you can maintain your peace and maintain your joy because you're not forming your feelings on whether you get that thing or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, please.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, thank you for the meditation.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, while training your mind this way and while avoiding the craving, how do you avoid indifference and apathy towards the world?
Did you say empathy?
Apathy.
Apathy.
Yeah.
What's your definition of apathy? Like dullness and like lackluster feeling, or what are you thinking there?
For me, what I found interesting, the example of the car, right? You told about your scratched car.
Mm-hmm.
My question immediately comes up, what if something really bad happens to you?
Mm-hmm.
Someone dies around you, and you react the same way. Is that well, my question is first, how should you react in that sense, and what?
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's multiple quote unquote right answers here. Sometimes people think like the world is black and white and there's one right answer and all the other answers are wrong. That's like the two extremes, right? That's like chasing, or over here and it's dull and lethargic. There's a middle way where there's multiple wise things to do, right? You could, like the car scratch, you could come out and you could see that the car scratched and you could be like, hey, did they leave a note? And you can look to see if they leave a note. Or you could say, they didn't leave a note. Are there any CCTV cameras that I could talk to the security guards and get help for this? Should I call the police? You know, there's multiple decisions that you could make here. But if you're doing this with anger and hostility and frustration, you're not going to be able to see all these different wise answers. And now when you're interacting with the security guards or the police, you're going to be so angry and bitter and harsh and hostile to them, they're going to be disinterested in helping you. And this is going to be the results of your decisions. So the Buddha isn't giving you like a decision tree of if this happens, do that. And if this happens, do that. Because that would be a permanent answer for every single situation. And that doesn't exist. That there's multiple variables that you need to look at. So you need to move to this higher consciousness where you can maintain your calmness and composure. And now you can look at the situation and decide what would be wise based on all these variables. And there's always multiple decisions to make in that situation. So oftentimes the unenlightened mind, when we talk about eliminating craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations, they can see that, but then they can see this other side really clear too, which is what you're asking questions about, is like indifference, right? Like this indifference, or, you know, this lazy, lethargic, lackluster, dull feeling. Neither of those two is what the Buddha is teaching you. But that's what the unenlightened mind can see very clearly because you're familiar with those things. But there's this middle way that the mind has difficulty seeing, where you gradually work towards your goals, objectives, or interests, but you don't base your inner feelings on it. And you can maintain your calmness and composure. So some of the other examples you gave is like somebody who dies that's close to you. The only thing that's happened here is impermanence. That's all that's really happened. That grief, that sorrow, that sadness is actually coming from the same thing, which is the craving for permanence. It's not the mind's love or care that's causing you to grieve when someone close to you dies. It's the mind craving permanence. And again, if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy, it gets pleasant feelings. And if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, and frustration. So if grandma and grandpa are alive, or mom or dad or brothers and sisters are alive, the mind's getting what it wants. But then when they die, the mind's not getting what it wants. And it's craving this permanence, not understanding that these people are impermanent. Because they were born, they have to die. So this grief and sorrow and sadness that people experience, sometimes you feel like you're cut off at the knees, or someone pulled the carpet out from under your feet when someone close to you dies. You actually don't need to experience that. You can opt out of that by training your mind, and you can maintain your appreciation and your gratitude that this person was in your life. And now you're not happy and joyful because they died. You're maintaining your peace and joy despite the fact that they have died. Because the only thing that's happened here is change. They were alive and then they died. This is just change. And it's kind of like every time the wind blows, you don't get upset or frustrated or irritated or grieve. But that's all that is that's impermanence. So obviously dying is a very significant event. It's very challenging for people to deal with because they're craving permanence in this relationship. And you can get to a point where people close to you, your mom, your siblings, your life partner, even children, if they are dying, you can maintain your mind's calmness and steadiness, that you're not all shaken up by that. But obviously that takes training to get to that point. So these aren't necessarily bad things that have happened. Sometimes when people die, someone might say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. My grandmother just died recently, a few months ago. Very impactful individual in my life. You know, she was very meaningful. She taught me a lot of things. And I didn't lose anything when grandma died. I gained something amazing. I gained this wonderful woman in my life that taught me so many things. So I didn't actually lose anything. I gained this wonderful thing. And I was able to maintain my joy and my peacefulness and my happiness. Same thing when my mom died. Same thing when my stepfather died. But I had trained my mind to be able to do that. So you can get to that point and you'll be able to see that it's not your love that's causing the sorrow and sadness, because obviously I love these people very much, but I didn't grieve when they died. I understood they are impermanent, and my mind wasn't craving for them to be permanent. So it's not indifference. You can still be in the middle and solve the certain challenges that you have, whether it's a scratch on your car or a tree falls on your house or anything like this. But you do it with a calm mind and you make wise decisions. And that's what's actually going to help you make the wise decisions. Because when your mind's all shaken up, you can't make that wise decision when the tree falls on your house. You're all shaken up by it. So the Buddha teaches you how to not be shaken up. So now you can make wise decisions and experience wholesome results in your day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. Anything else you guys would like to ask? Oh, yes, ma'am.
I would be interested to hear your reflections on the role of fear in terms of, how you see the path developing of the mind in relation to fear.
Sure. So fear is just another what we call conditioned feeling. It's a painful feeling that is based in the same thing of craving, desire, attachment. There's no purpose for the fear other than the fact that it's showing you what you're craving and what you're longing and yearning for. So say, for example, somebody is afraid of spiders, right? So their mind might push this away and they think, I never want to see a spider ever again. And the mind thinks that that's going to solve it. This is called aversion. Or you might be afraid of large crowds and the mind might think, I'm never going to go around large crowds ever again, right? And that's the mind not understanding what the underlying cause is, which is the craving, desire, attachment. It's craving permanence. The permanence that it's craving is never want to see a spider, never want to be around a large crowd. That's the permanence that it's craving. And it can only be comfortable and happy in that situation. So your happiness shrinks, right? If the sun is shining, if my parents do this, if my bank account is this, if my boss does this, if I have this much money in my bank account, if my boss does this, if I never see a spider, right? If I'm never around large crowds, then I will be happy, right? So your happiness is actually shrinking the more cravings, desires, attachments you have in your mind. So you're not actually going to solve this by pushing it away. So the way that you actually solve it is there's a whole path that the Buddha teaches you with breathing mindfulness meditation, with generosity, and many other teachings too. But one of the things you can do with fear is you can put your mind in the situation that it fears, and that'll train it to let it go. And it takes time to gradually do this. So if somebody was afraid of spiders, I would say look at a lot of pictures of spiders, like in a magazine or on the internet, And then after you do that several times and the fear's coming up and you're cutting that off, then go to like a museum where they're not alive, but their eyes are looking at you. They got those little hairs on their body. And now you look at them in the museum and you see the fear coming up and you cut that off and cut it off. You're not suppressing it. You're cutting it off before it becomes a feeling. Then go to places where their spiders are alive and actually start looking at them in that environment too, and realizing that they're not causing you any harm. You're not causing them harm. They're not causing you harm. Same thing with a large crowd. The best thing to do is actually go around large crowds and train your mind to be comfortable. Because someday you'll be walking down the street thinking that you're with just one other person or two other people, and you're going to turn the corner and you're going to be in the middle of a huge crowd, right? And all of a sudden, you're all shaken up and you're hyperventilating with stress and anxiety. So you haven't actually solved the root cause by trying to push away crowds. This is called aversion. So by you going around crowds, for example, if someone was afraid of this, they would actually slowly desensitize their mind to the fear. And now that craving, desire, attachment gets eliminated, where you can be happy with 2 or 3 people, but you can also be happy when you're in a large crowd too. And now your mind's free. It's liberated. That's what we call enlightenment, is where the mind's free and liberated. And one by one, you free the mind of these cravings. And that's where the peace and joy comes into your mind more and more and more. And that's why it's not a snapping of the fingers and you instantly get to enlightenment. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And then, by the way, in modern psychology, they call this exposure therapy. If you guys have been exposed to that type of discipline, they will expose you to the things that you're afraid of in order to help you train your mind to let go. It was on. I think you might have just turned it off.
Thank you. So that, and by cutting it off, you mean to notice that it's there, but to not go into it and come back to your breath, for example?
Yeah, so the Eightfold Path that the Buddha teaches, it's in 3 different sections. There's 8 individual factors, but then there's 3 sections. There's a wisdom section, a moral conduct section, and a mental discipline section. What he's teaching you in the mental discipline section is to cultivate what's called right mindfulness, or awareness of mind, where you can be aware of the thoughts, ideas, the feelings, things like this that are coming up. So general awareness is what mindfulness is, but oftentimes people are using this word in a way that the Buddha didn't use it. They will say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? They're replacing the word careful with mindful. And that's not how the Buddha used it, but if they'd like to use it that way, it's up to them. But if you understand mindfulness as awareness of mind, that's what you're working on cultivating. And that's what the meditation is doing for you. The one that we're going to do this evening at 9 p.m., it's helping you to develop awareness of mind. And I think you did this on Wednesday with us, the Bring the Mindfulness meditation, where you're getting awareness of the mind. But more specifically, what the right mindfulness is teaching you is called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is the life cycle that your discontentedness is going to take that you may or may not even be aware of right now. Before you become angry, there's some bodily sensation that you're experiencing. It's like a tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is like an early warning system that you have, alerting you that you're about to get angry. And you might notice this in some situations, but you would like to develop your mindfulness where you can notice it in every situation. Because if you can cut off and let go at the bodily sensations when this feeling is arising, you're going to be able to transform your mind. Because if you don't cut it off as a feeling, it's then going to become a feeling. And now the mind is actually wired. There's that feeling. And if you don't cut it off there, then it's going to affect the condition of your mind. Have you ever been grumpy or irritable for like a couple of hours or a couple of days or maybe a week or two? Of course you have, right? Because you didn't understand what I'm teaching you and your mind's not enlightened yet. So of course you've been angry and bitter and harsh for multiple days or irritated for multiple days. That's the 3rd foundation of mindfulness. You need to be aware of that so that you can, if you missed it as a bodily sensation and you missed it as a feeling, now you're noticing 3 hours in, oh my gosh, this mind is so angry. What am I doing? Let me get out of this. Let me cut that off, right? Because if you don't do that, then there's this 4th foundation, which is called a mental object. This is a deeply rooted container in the mind. In this example, it's ill will, right? We weren't born with ill will. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, right? We didn't have that when we were born, but we developed it over time. Because when we got chocolate and ice cream from mom and dad, we thought that was the best day ever. But when we didn't get chocolate and ice cream, we were angry, we were frustrated, and we thought it was mom and dad who were making us angry. But all the while, it was our own craving. That as long as we got what we want, we were happy, we got our chocolate and ice cream, but when we didn't get it, we were angry and frustrated. So this mental object, this deeply rooted container of ill will got formed in the mind. So the Buddha is teaching you to be aware of these four things, and this is part of the training to develop this mindfulness. And if you can spot every single time when the bodily sensations are arising, and you can cut it off and let it go, this will transform your mind. And you're not suppressing your thoughts, you're suppressing your feelings, you're not repressing them, you're cutting it off before it even becomes a feeling. The way you might think about it is like if you were taking a boat from Canada to the UK and you were out in the middle of the water, you'd like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once it gets in the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. You got to get it out. So it's the same thing as if you'd like to cut off and let go of this arising feeling that hasn't become a feeling yet as a bodily sensation. And if you can cut that off every single time, you're about 1 to 3 years away from enlightenment. But it'll take you multiple years to get to that point. But nonetheless, you'll see gradual improvement to your mind along the way. I've had some students say within 2 days, they've seen improvement to their mind, right? So you work for multiple years to get to that point where you can cut off every single time at the bodily sensations. And then from that point, you're about 1 to 3 years away from enlightenment, because every single time you see discontentedness arising, you cut it off before it becomes a feeling. So the mind is like alerting you with those bodily sensations. It's like, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get angry here. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get, and you're like, nope, not going to let you do that. And you cut that off. Whereas if you do allow the mind to do that, and you will on your journey to enlightenment, because the mind's not fully trained, you notice that and you cut it off and let it go as soon as possible, not allowing the mind to dwell in that feeling. So the people who are teaching to observe the feeling, welcome the feeling in, look at it, make friends with the feeling, this isn't what the Buddha taught. Because as long as you allow the mind to stay wired with this feeling, it's going to keep doing it over and over and over again. You got to get ahead of the curve and cut it off before it actually becomes a feeling. So the way this looks in day-to-day life is, let's just say you're sitting on the sofa and you're watching the news, and something comes on the news and you're noticing the bodily sensation of frustration arising. Well, rather than just sit there and dwell in that and keep watching the news, you cut that off and let it go. You turn off the TV, go for a walk, go for a bike ride, go wash your hands, go do something else. And now your mind has been preserved. You've done what the Buddha calls protecting your own contentedness. You need to protect your own contentedness, protect your own peacefulness. So that's what the cutting off and letting go is. So if you do that enough over a long-term period, whenever the news is coming on and you're noticing your craving arising, you're noticing the feelings arising, you cut off and let go, eventually you'll be able to sit there and watch the news and you won't have any anger and frustration, because that anger and frustration is just getting in your way of a peaceful and wonderful day. So you can get to the point where you go through maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year of training with something like the news. And now eventually you can watch it and just be just fine, because it's not affecting your mind, because you've cut off the craving. The craving here is craving for the world to be a certain way. A lot of people have that, right? They crave for the world to be a certain way, and they want it to be that way. They're longing, yearning for it. Well, your peacefulness, you're basing that on what other people are doing. So if these 8 billion people do things a certain way, then I will be peaceful. Good luck with that, right? It's not going to happen. So what you would like to do is get rid of that longing, yearning, that craving, right? Where you want the world to be a certain way, but also that indifference where your mind swings over here to the other side. You're not interested in that either, right? You'd like to come to the middle where you can have care and concern for the misfortune of others. This is compassion, the care and concern for the misfortune of others. And now you can maintain that care and concern, but you don't base your feelings on, oh my gosh, this child doesn't have food. Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. I'm so sad. I'm so frustrated. Or you're not interested in being on the other side where, who cares if that child doesn't have any food? I don't care. Neither of those two sides are peacefulness. So the middle is to have this care and this concern. And that's a mental state that you can maintain long term. And whether you choose to do something about that or not, that's a whole separate question, right? That's your generosity if you choose to do that. But you would like to maintain the mental state of care and concern. So that's why when you see your mind longing, yearning, when you see it over here in indifference, you bring it to the middle by cutting it off and letting it go. And that bodily sensations is the indication that this is occurring. So if you learn the Eightfold Path in detail, the way that the Buddha teaches it through his original words, because you'll find plenty of sources that'll share this, but it's not based in his original teachings. You need to get really good, reliable translations, which is what we provide as part of our community. If you get these really reliable translations, you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach, and then you don't believe it. You learn it, reflect on it to independently verify it, and you practice. And as you implement this in your life, you'll see that it actually works. So this is just one little section where you have mindfulness or awareness of mind, and then you apply what's called right effort to cut off and let go. And the thing that's helping you do that is what's called right concentration, where you're training your mind through meditation and singleness of mind. And if you learn this entire path, you'll see how it all fits together and it all works together, so you know what would be wise to do on a day-to-day basis to train your mind. I think we have a question up front here. Just need to turn it on. Yeah. It's on.
Yeah, Azan, I read some spiritual books. One is Seth Material, SETH Material. That book just told me like life is about like open and script, yeah, or dream. Everything's illusional, and our belief create our reality. So I want to know, I mean, that kind of saying is close to the Buddha's teaching. Like life is like an open end script. Actually, it's co-created by small me and a bigger me. Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't from the Buddha. The Buddha didn't teach these kinds of things. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any beliefs at all. You will know the truth, because with belief, you don't know it's true or false, right? You're just believing it because someone convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself. But by the time you go through all these examples, like I talked about Santa Claus, when you go through each individual natural law that the Buddha taught and you cultivate the wisdom about it, you'll know the truth. You'll know what's wise and unwise because you've seen the truth. So there's no belief whatsoever. So if someone's teaching your belief creates your reality, this isn't what the Buddha taught. He didn't teach those kinds of things, because by the time you get to enlightenment, there is no belief whatsoever. And he didn't teach that there's a small me and a big me. He actually taught that there is no you, that there's no you here. This is called the universal truth of a non-self. That this body is not you, this mind is not you, this self-image, this self-identity. He didn't teach those kinds of things.
We a little bit different from like a new age, books, something. Okay.
And the Buddha warned and advised us that it would be unwise to change his teachings, because once you change a Buddha's teachings, they're no longer effective at helping you to get to enlightenment. Because what a Buddha is they meet three primary criteria. Is they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So during the lifetime of a Buddha, they're putting lights along the side of the path, illuminating that path, making it as clear as possible for people to be able to see what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So if somebody comes along and changes his teachings, like a new age teaching, they're actually like knocking over his lights that he put down along the side of the path. And now it makes it very difficult for other people to understand what that path is. So the Buddha describes that it would be for our own harm, or the harm of many people, if we change his teachings. But unfortunately, not many people study his original teachings, so they don't understand that that's the case, that it's important to preserve a Buddha's teachings in the way that he actually taught them.
And what's your interpretation of the words emptiness?
emptiness.
Yeah, emptiness.
Yeah, so what the Buddha is teaching here, he very rarely uses the word emptiness, but there's some teachers who tend to focus on this a lot, but he just uses it very rarely. What he's essentially talking about is emptying the mind of all the pollutions and what we call conditioning of the mind. Each individual, when you're growing up in the world, you're learning how to be a human being from other human beings, right? So if you grew up in a hostile and bitter and harsh environment where your parents and your aunts and uncles and other adults are being bitter and harsh and hostile and they're fearful and angry, your mind's going to be conditioned that way. You're going to think that this is the way to live life, and you're going to grow up that way. And like, for example, I grew up one time, one of my family members ordered some food at a restaurant, and they didn't have that food, and they started yelling and hollering at them. So you kind of grow up seeing that, and you think that maybe that's the way you should be too. So your mind is conditioned to think about the world and process the world around you in a certain way. That's the conditioning. That's the pollution of the mind. When you train your mind to understand these natural laws and you get rid of that conditioning, that's the emptiness. That's where the mind is now empty, that it's now purified. It's now unconditioned. That when you have a conditional mind, when your mind's conditioned, you will have feelings that arise, change, and fade away. Those feelings are conditional. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll have permanent mental state of enlightenment because it's now unconditioned. It's now purified. The mind is now empty of those pollutions, but you'll have deep wisdom and you'll have these mental states that are permanent. So when we say an empty mind, it's empty of pollution, but your mind still has wisdom. You still have these mental states of things like loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, and all these other things. Mm-hmm. It's on. Yeah, it's on. Once you see the light, it's on. It's okay. You can use it. There's people online that are joining us.
Hello. Because at first I think emptiness means that everything appear in front of us actually is neutral, not really good or bad.
Mm-hmm. This is where you once you eliminate your craving, desire, attachments, you will no longer have what's called favoring and opposing, right? Or agreeable or disagreeable. That's what the mind has when it has craving, desire, attachment. It wants it this way. So if you walk down the street and you smell the odor of flowers coming out of a flower shop, that could be agreeable to you. But now you get pleasant feelings from that, happiness. But if you walk down the street and you smell the sewer, you might consider that to be disagreeable. So this is the favoring and opposing. But by the time you get rid of craving, desire, attachment, there's no favoring and opposing. There's no agreeable and disagreeable. It's just contact. It's like, oh, wow, that really smells great. Those flowers are amazing. Wow, I think I might stay here a little bit. Wow, that's really beautiful. Look at those colors. Okay, that's over. Now you move on, you take a few steps, and it's like, there's the sewer. That smells pretty right. Let me keep walking, right? But you don't get angry, you don't get frustrated because you know that this is an impermanent situation. And there's no need to be angry or frustrated just because you're smelling this odor. So when you have craving, you'll have agreeable and disagreeable. You'll get happy when you have agreeable, and you'll get angry and frustrated when there's disagreeable. But when you get rid of craving, desire, attachment, it's just contact. It's not agreeable or disagreeable. It's not favoring and opposing. So that's kind of what you're talking about there.
It's also close to what you mentioned about unconditional love, that acceptable for everything, right?
Yeah, so when you get to unconditional love, you'll just love all beings as they are, right? You won't have wants and expectations. You won't be trying to convince other people to do things a certain way. Where in order to get to that, you need to separate the choices and decisions that someone makes from the person themselves. Understanding that you're going to disagree with their choices and decisions, but you can still love the person. Because you'll never meet someone that you're going to agree with 100% of the time. There's only one person who makes decisions your way 100% of the time. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, but actually,
it's yourself, right?
Because sometimes a little bit, the feeling of judgmental will just appear sometimes because we still got have some bad feeling or good feeling, or what is good or what is bad. Still something like that. I know unconditional love, but sometimes maybe a little bit difficult. I think when we just follow our excitement, like what you said, like follow our excitement and feel so happy and joyful. Sometimes it's easier for us, to be like acceptable for everything. But sometimes just like high and low, and we will feel bad about something. Yeah.
It's only difficult for you because your mind's not trained, because it lacks wisdom. So right now, anything that you see to be difficult, that's just because the mind lacks wisdom. At one time, you thought walking was difficult, right? When you were a little kid, when you were 1 year old, 2 years old, you probably thought walking was difficult or brushing your teeth was difficult. But as you cultivated more wisdom, it wasn't difficult for you anymore. So this unconditional love, sure, right now, it's probably difficult for you, but that's just because you lack wisdom, which we were talking about. Your mind lacks wisdom and you haven't trained it because you have cravings, desires, attachments. You want this person to be a certain way. So when you cultivate enough wisdom and you get rid of your cravings, your longing, your yearning, you can actually practice unconditional love, but you just need to understand the whole path. You don't understand the whole path right now, and that's why it's difficult. And that's why the cultivation of wisdom is the primary thing. Is what? Your restrictive belief. Well, as long as you have beliefs, you don't know what's true or false, and that's going to hinder you, right? That's going to hinder you. Okay, so let me see if we have any other questions anywhere. I see some things online here. Okay, there's someone here online that's asking how to wake up from grumpiness and to eliminate grumpiness. You're going to need to practice the Eightfold Path. You need to first learn it. So since you're on our YouTube channel, if you go to our YouTube channel, since you're there already, you can search for the Eightfold Path. You're going to see many videos, many live streams where I taught the Eightfold Path, and you'll be able to see what I actually taught there using the original words of the Buddha. And that's what you need to learn to be able to train your mind to eliminate the grumpiness.
How do you detach from other people's expectation of you?
Okay, she asked, how do you detach from the expectations that other people have of you, right? So if people are putting expectations on you, their mind is lacking wisdom. They think that they're going to get to happiness by forcing you to do things a certain way. They're trying to form their happiness based on you, but they'll never actually get to happiness that way because they can only be happy when you do things their way. That's their selfishness. But they might tell you that you're selfish because you're not doing things their way. But in reality, it's their own mind selfishness. So when people are putting expectations on you, you just understand that that's their expectation and don't adopt it in your mind as being your expectation of yourself. So just you need to be able to really be good at spotting people trying to put expectations on you and don't adopt it in your own mind. I'll give you a story on this, a real short one, so you understand how this works. When I was very young, about 17 years old, my family came to me. I was hanging out with my guy friends a lot. And they said, David, you're spending too much time with your guy friends. You need to get a girlfriend. And I thought about it for a few months. And I was like, all right, well, I'll get a girlfriend. So when I got a girlfriend, I started spending time with her. And then they came to me and they said, David, you're spending too much time with your girlfriend. You need to spend time with us. And I was like, wow, these people can't be happy. Right? Like first I did what they said and now they want something else. And I decided at that point, I was about 18 years old, I'm never going to try to meet my family's expectations ever. Right? Because that's them trying to get their happiness from me, trying to control me. They live their life. They have their life. They're living their life. They get to make decisions about their life. But other people don't get to make decisions for your life. So when people are trying to put expectations on you, just see that for what it is, which is their cravings, desires, attachments, and don't allow your mind to adopt that expectation of yourself coming from that other person. Because you'll never meet your own expectations. If you put expectations on yourself, right, you'll work really hard to get there. And then even if you get there, you'll be happy temporarily, but then you know what's going to happen to your expectations, right? right? And now you're going to work really hard to get there. And then if you fall short, you're going to be upset. And even if you get there, you'll be happy temporarily. And then what's going to happen?
You said shoot
Right.
for the moon.
Right, but that's through wise decision making, not through craving, desire, attachment, right? Longing, yearning. For example, I'm interested in seeing the teachings of the Buddha reach the entire world. I would like to see the entire world understand how true his teachings really are. But I'm doing that through wise decisions, not through chasing and longing, yearning, and craving permanence. Because if I did that, when people get up and leave, I'd be angry and frustrated, right? But no, this is just impermanence. Right? That maybe they had other things to do. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they're tired of sitting on the floor. Maybe they like to go take a shower. Who knows what they are interested in doing, right? So if you crave permanence and you're in a situation where you're trying to share the teachings of the Buddha, you'd be frustrated and agitated, right? But you can do it from the middle way where you gradually work towards goals, objectives, or interests and realize like, hey, they were here for 20 minutes. They were here for an hour or however long it was. They learned something. They benefited. Wonderful. I'm working towards my goal. Right? And I can just maintain my contentedness. So you're not craving and longing, yearning, you're not chasing. You're still shooting for the moon, but you're doing that through wise decision making and then not craving permanence. So you can be motivated and encouraged through wise decision making. But right now, the way your mind works, in most people's minds in the unenlightened state, is they're motivated based on their craving. They want that bigger house. They want that bigger bank account. They want that nicer car. And now that's what they're chasing. But that burns out. You will burn out on that, right? And then when it burns out, you're not motivated anymore, right? And you feel dull and lethargic. But if you come to the middle, and by the way, if you swing to this side, you're dull and lethargic over here, right? But if you come to the middle and you're gradually pursuing things through a goal, objective, or interest, through wise decision making, you can do that all day long. You can do that the rest of your life. That's why the Buddha taught from the age of 35 to 80, and he never burned out. And that's how I know what I'm going to be doing here is for the end of this life, because I'm not doing it based in craving. What I was doing with the computers and the technology, that was based in craving. That's why it burned out. That's why I was no longer interested in it. And then I opened up my own businesses, and still that craving burned out too. And then I finally got to the point where I was like, this is what I would like to be doing. And now I can do this for the rest of my life. And I won't burn out. I can maintain my energy to work towards this with wise decision making. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. So what I'm going to do is just end by saying thank you to all of you guys. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop and understand the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to. We have class tonight at 9 o'clock where I'm going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation with students and helping them understand the symbolism, the artwork, and the architecture of temples and Buddhist art and stuff like this. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it'll help make your visits to temples and things like this more meaningful for you. And then we have class on Wednesday where I'm going to be doing loving kindness meditation with students again at 9 a.m. over in the classroom. And then I'll be opening up for all questions that you have. Over there, it's a lot quieter. There's air conditioning. It's a lot more interesting, I think, to be over there. It's interesting to be here, too, because we have all this artwork and these wonderful building. But over there, it's a lot quieter, and we got air conditioning and things like that. You can feel very comfortable. Not that you're uncomfortable here, but I think it's even more comfortable over there. So feel free to come over there either Sunday tonight at 9 p.m. or Wednesday at 9 a.m. And then on Fridays, we have a social event where you guys are welcome to come at 6 p.m. on Fridays. We have an event where people just come and we essentially have like a little party where we play games, we have conversation, we listen to music and have a good time. So whatever you guys choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap.